We're here in Freeport, Illinois, at the site of the First Baptist Church of Freeport. It has a great history with regard to the Baptists here in this part of Illinois. 13 years before the Lincoln-Douglas debate that took place here in Freeport, that was in 1858, but in 1845, 26 men and women gathered together into the kitchen of Reverend James Schofield to form the First Baptist Church of Freeport. He'd been sent from the American Baptist Home Mission Society to Freeport to establish this church, and they met, and he was the age 42, and they fought for their existence in their early years, to say the least. They were a very poor church. They were really just, a lot of the people were new to the area, settlers trying to get established. And so honestly, the church moved forward and was built by the labor of his hands and the hands of those that were here with him at that time. He just was a man of resolute courage and a stout will and an energetic leader to see the projects through. He raised enough money to buy material, not labor, material for the church building, shingles and lumber, but he bought it in Chicago. That was 114 miles from here, and they had to haul it out by wagon. Well, the roads were horrible, so along the way they had to unload a lot of materials along the side of the road in order to get the wagon here. And so as they unloaded it, he wrote on the side of those materials, "For the First Baptist Church of Freeport." Miraculously, in time, all of that building supply did make its way here to Freeport, 114 miles away, where Reverend Schofield and the men of his church, by the sweat of their brow, built the first church building. Of course, the building here came around later, but in the 1840s and 1850s, Pastor Schofield saw the church membership swell from that original 26 up to 100. And then in time, he himself oversaw the founding of 13 different Baptist assemblies that he helped to get started in this area, one of them not far in Galena as well. He had some bouts with health that had him have to relocate, and actually a few years later, after the founding of the church, a cholera epidemic broke out, and for 2 years the church didn't meet and was really scattered, and it was up to a pastor with an interesting name, Ichabod Clark, to gather that church back together and to reorganize them. So that was a challenging, yet he was successful at that as well. So about Reverend Schofield, later he moved to the southwestern part of Missouri, and when he moved there, that area had been decimated by the loss of men during the Civil War. So the area that he went to was impoverished, mainly widows and orphans. There were no church buildings. Late in his life, Pastor Schofield gathered the people together in forests and ministered to them, and again began to build the most basic house of worship, and put up church buildings, 3 of them in his 70s, to meet the needs of those people there. A little bit more about Reverend Schofield. Father of 18 children. His first 2 wives passed away, and so 3 wives, 10 sons, 8 daughters. How about his family? One of his sons was the pastor of the Fourth Baptist Church in St. Louis. His next son was General John Schofield of the United States Army, in command at West Point. Then another son, George, commander of the post in Fort Duncan in Texas. Elisha, a son, had a shocking death on the chamber of the State House in Richmond, Virginia, when the floor gave way. Then he had a son, Frank, farming in Dallas County, Missouri. Charles, graduate of West Point. 2 of his other sons had passed away when they were young, and several daughters living as well. Lastly, a quote from his son, John, who was in charge at West Point, and this quote was used for many years, may still be, by the military with regard to the treatment of superiors to those that are under their charge. John Schofield, son of Reverend James Schofield of the First Baptist of Bridgeport, said this: "The discipline which makes the soldiers of a free country reliable in battle is not to be gained by harsh or tyrannical treatment. On the contrary, such treatment is far more likely to destroy than to make an army. It is possible to impart instruction and give commands in such a manner and such a tone of voice as to inspire in the soldier no feeling other than an intense desire to obey, while the opposite manner and tone of voice cannot fail to excite but strong resentment and a desire to disobey. The one mode or other of dealing with subordinates springs from a corresponding spirit within the commander himself. The commander who feels the respect which is due to others cannot fail to inspire them in respect for himself, while he who feels and hence manifests disrespect towards others, especially his subordinates, cannot fail but to inspire hatred against himself. So it does seem like Reverend James Schofield, two things. Number one, manual labor and a determined spirit. Number two, a man who built character into his children and his family and left a great testimony, not just for the churches that he built, but also for the family that he left behind. So First Baptist Church, Freeport, Illinois, 114 miles from Chicago, getting close to the city of Dubuque and the great Mississippi River. Great testimony to the early Baptists and the labor that they did.